Unbelievable. Mechanic's daughter fixed his truck for free. You won't believe what rolled in next. The sun hung low in the sky as Sarah wiped her greasy hands on her worn-out coveralls, frustration bubbling inside her. Just outside their family's garage, her father's old truck coughed and sputtered in the driveway, refusing to move another inch. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a burden that seemed to encapsulate everything her family and town were enduring: the weight of bills, the silence of lost customers, and the echoes of dreams deferred. Every time she glanced at it, anger surged within her. Why did no one see her beyond the mechanic's daughter? Was being labeled as just the mechanic's kid all she would ever be? Today, she was grappling with more than just acceptance. As she steeled herself to confront the truck, a storm of emotions twisted in her chest. She felt the world pressing in, society's expectations suffocating her desire to rise above her circumstances. The heaviness of her father's silent discontent was palpable. He was a proud man, unwilling to accept help or admit defeat, as their garage, once bustling, now barely scraped by. Days turned into weeks. She'd memorized the faces of their dwindling customers, each with their burdens but never a nod of understanding for her own. Could they see her? The dreams of becoming an engineer, unraveling mechanics as something more than just a workshop whim, lay heavy on her heart like a wrench tightened too far. Before she could spiral into despair, Sarah shook away the shadows. The truck remained at her feet, a challenge daring her to act. With a deep breath, she grabbed the few tools she had at her disposal, tools that felt more like weights than instruments of change. As she knelt beside the engine, determination replaced her unease. Do it, her mind pushing softly against her doubt. Rise up. Her fingers began to work, instinctively combining what she had learned over the years, the engine's dark secrets revealing themselves to her as she tinkered away. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Hours passed in a blur of sweat and diligence. When the engine finally roared to life, it was as if she had ignited a piece of herself. Her heart swelled with a sense of accomplishment. She wasn't just the mechanic's daughter, she was Sarah, the mechanic who could make things happen. The thrill of her talent showcased reignited hope in their garage. And yet, that hope came with the pang of expectation. As news of the repair spread, a luxury car limped into town, driven by a stern businessman unaware of the struggles that seeped through the town like a slow leak. When he pulled into the garage, Sarah felt her pulse quicken. This was her ticket. Opportunity stood on the precipice, but the businessman's dismissive glance toward her almost crushed her aspirations before they had a chance to bloom. Internal conflict raged within her as she watched him converse with her father, her heart pounding with the need to prove herself. Could she fight against his ignorance? She felt a flicker of defiance but also the tightening chains of loyalty to her father. What would he think? Beneath the financial struggles, she sensed his disappointment, and it drowned her spirit. Standing at the intersection of fear and ambition, Sarah confronted her dreams once more, questions weighing heavy like an anvil. Would she seize this moment for herself or let it slip into the shadows? That businessman's presence lingered like a storm cloud, threatening to uproot everything. As she braced herself to step forward, a revelation about the businessman sent a wave of uncertainty through her, one that hit closer to home than she could have ever anticipated. Would pursuing her desires shatter the fragile dynamics of her family? The sense of dread hung thick in the air as she prepared to reveal who she really was. Fear gripped Sarah's mind, threatening to drown out the voice of her ambition. The businessman stood as an imposing figure, embodying everything she resented about societal expectations and the biases that marginalized her. Would he ever recognize her talent, or would she always remain on the periphery, waiting for someone else to acknowledge her capabilities? As her father chatted with the man, Sarah wrestled with her burgeoning confidence. She took a step back, retreating into the shadows of their garage, but the roaring engine she had just fixed echoed in her mind a reminder that she was capable of more than mere observation. Should she let the opportunity pass like so many before, or was this moment, however difficult, the juncture she had been waiting for? In the midst of her internal battle, the businessman glanced her way again, and for a fleeting moment, their eyes locked. Sarah felt a rush of determination surge through her. Against the trembling doubt, she straightened her posture, reminding herself that she had earned a place at this intersection of ambition and fear. With every instinct screaming for her to retreat, she took another step forward. Her father's voice boomed, invoking pride and authority, but a new thought ignited in her: what if she didn't need his validation to prove her worth? Slowly, she lifted her chin, brushing off the doubt like the grease from her hands. "Excuse me," she interrupted, her voice surprisingly steady. Both men turned to look at her, the businessman's brow furrowing in confusion, while her father's eyes widened with a mixture of surprise and unease. "I can help," Sarah offered, stepping into the space that felt charged with unspoken tension. She felt her heart race as time slowed. I fixed a truck earlier today. I know my way around engines." A silence enveloped them as she absorbed the businessman's bemusement. Would he laugh or scoff? Instead, he regarded her with an appraising gaze, tilting his head as if considering her statement with newfound interest. This was her moment to bridge the perception gap. Her father shifted, she could see the concern etched on his face, grappling with surprise and a hint of betrayal. Had she stepped too far into territory he believed was solely his? The weight of familial loyalty clung to her, yet the thrill of potential freedom surged stronger. "Is that so?" The businessman broke the stillness, his voice betraying an unexpected curiosity. "Then perhaps you could show me what you can do." Something inside Sarah snapped into place. The moment of truth had arrived, the chance to redefine her identity and, perhaps, even her father's perception of her. With just a few words, she could dismantle the stigma she had felt her entire life. She turned toward the mechanic's daughter who had always shied away from challenges and commanded herself to embrace vulnerability. "I'd be happy to take a look," she said, trying to mask the falter in her voice with confidence. The heat of recognition washed over her as she approached the luxury vehicle parked awkwardly in the driveway. The polished surface gleamed under the fading sunlight, but beneath its surface, the complexities lay hidden, just waiting for her to uncover them. As she popped the hood, the weight of her father's scrutiny hung heavy, yet a warmth ignited in her chest. Could he truly see her as she was, beyond mere titles and roles? The gears in her mind began to turn, evaluating the intricate components while racing against societal perceptions. A sharp gasp from the businessman snapped her focus back to the moment. "You know what you're doing?" he asked incredulously. "I might surprise you," she replied, every word a testament to rising confidence. Now she was not only determined to prove her skills but compelled to challenge the assumptions that had defined her. The stakes felt painfully high, but she was no longer willing to let fear dictate her place in this world. With each tool she reached for, her resolve solidified. Sarah worked with fierce precision, her actions fueled by both nerves and exhilaration. The possibility of being recognized for who she was and not just who she was expected to be made every moment electrifying. As she dove deep into the mechanics, a sudden realization dawned: this was not merely about fixing an engine, it was about forging her identity. She was a competent mechanic, an aspiring engineer, an individual ready to break free from the weight of her past. But that awareness came with a different kind of fear. What if she succeeded? What if her journey pushed her further from her father, and what if it forever altered the landscape of their relationship? A new storm brewed within her, unsettled and demanding attention, as she faced not only the challenge before her but the looming complexity of her aspirations, a reality with the potential to rewrite everything she knew. Sparks flew as she turned a screw, each audible pop igniting a new question in her mind. Could she reshape her destiny? The garage rang with new possibilities, but uncertainty loomed large, urging her to climb higher or retreat back to the shadows. As she craved validation, she recognized that she was standing at the cusp of transformation where the line between dreams and reality began to blur. The moment of truth arrived not just for her mechanics, but for her very identity. The crisp air filled the garage as Sarah leaned in closer to the engine, the scent of grease mixing with a subtle hint of coolant. Each tool felt familiar in her hands, a welcomed weight that connected her to countless hours spent tinkering and learning. In that moment, the world outside faded away, replaced by a singular focus on the mechanical puzzle laid out before her, yet, a flicker of doubt lingered at the edges of her mind, creeping in with each turn of the wrench. As the businessman observed her, she could feel his eyes assessing not just her skills, but her worth. His presence was a reminder of all the hurdles she faced in a male-dominated field, but it also ignited a fierce desire within her to prove him wrong, to show him that she belonged here just as much as he did. Minutes passed with a rhythmic click of metal against metal, and the tension in her shoulders began to ease. She immersed herself in the task, analyzing problems and solving them with a methodical precision that surprised even herself. What had once felt like an exhausting struggle transformed into a dance of intellect and intuition. Each time she reached for a tool, she felt a piece of her former self strip away, exposing a mechanist eager to blaze her own path. "What is your plan after this?" the businessman asked, breaking the silence and pulling her from her deep focus like a sudden jolt of electricity. Caught off guard, Sarah hesitated, scanning her thoughts for a cohesive answer. Could she outline a vision for her future? She cleared her throat, her mouth suddenly dry. "I want to study engineering," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "To innovate how things work, to make an impact in this field." Ambitious, he mused, scrutinizing her with a renewed expression, almost skeptical. "What makes you believe you can manage in such a competitive environment?" His question struck her, deeper than she anticipated. The dizzying rush of self-doubt returned, knocking on the door of her confidence. What did qualify her to dream that big? Realizing that he was not just a businessman but a symbol of the industry's bias, she inhaled slowly, brushing off the worry that clung to her. "Because I have to," she shot back, the words galloping out faster than she intended. "It's not just for me, but for everyone else who feels they don't have a voice. I want to create machinery and solutions that include us all." The pause between them stretched like a taut wire. She sensed the moment hang heavy with unspoken things. Her father's disbelief slicked his features, a flicker of fear in response to her boldness. Was it too much for him? Or was this exactly what he needed to witness her breaking free of the mold meant for her? A curt nod from the businessman broke the silence, and he gestured towards the nearly finished engine. "Let us see what you can really do then." With renewed fervor, Sarah pushed through the final steps. Determination surged through her veins. She could feel the adrenaline, an electric current urging her to not just meet expectations but to obliterate them. As she tightened the last screws, the clamor of her ambition drowned out everything else, even the nagging fears from the past. When she finally stepped back and wiped her hands on a rag, the engine purred to life, a sound vibrant with possibilities. The businessman's skepticism seemed to fade, giving way to respect. A flicker of recognition flitted across her father's face, pride battling with something deeper, fear of her independence, but Sarah's heart raced. She didn't want just acceptance, she craved the role of an innovator, one whose creations would speak louder than society's limitations. She glanced at the businessman, now displaying interest almost bordering on admiration. "So, did I surprise you?" she challenged, a hint of mischief dancing in her tone. That he chuckled lightly. "Color me impressed, Miss Thompson. Maybe there's more to you than I initially thought." As the glow of accomplishment washed over her, another realization struck. This was just the beginning. She now had a foothold, a moment to propel herself into the world outside her father's shadow. What would this encounter lead to? Would the businessman's interest open doors, or would her decision to embrace her true self alienate her from the very roots that shaped her? Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach, the thrill of success suddenly laced with apprehension about future confrontations. What awaited her in the realm of engineering? How much of her past would she have to fight against to build her new identity? Having stepped outside the shadows, Sarah sensed a new battle brewing just beyond the horizon, the struggle for her future. Would she find allies in an industry long filled with obstacles, Or would she have to carve her way through the unyielding landscape of patriarchal norms? In that instant, standing before the powerful businessman, she knew she was ready to forge ahead, but uncertainty loomed as she prepared for this next chapter, where her true fight awaited. As the engine's satisfying growl filled the garage, Sarah felt a surge of triumph ripple through her. Yet, in the wake of success, the lingering question remained, what next? The businessman's nod indicated approval, but it also served as a reminder of expectations that hovered ominously in the background. Would he see her as just another mechanic, or could she truly elevate her role in the industry? What's your next step then, Sarah? The businessman probed, clearly intrigued but perhaps still unconvinced. I need to apply to engineering programs. I want to work on projects that push boundaries and reimagine what machines can do, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The words ignited a flicker of uncertainty. Was she just spouting idealistic dreams? Or was she actually capable of turning them into reality? As she spoke, she watched the businessman's expression shift from casual interest to something more contemplative. Determination is key, he remarked, but you'll need to prove that you're not just a mechanic. The industry is unforgiving. His words struck her like a cold shower, splashing a dose of reality over her ambitions. Would she have to fight tooth and nail, armed with little more than her tenacity? The weight of her aspirations began to feel heavier, the responsibility to shatter stereotypes pressing down on her shoulders. However, behind that intimidation, a raw energy bubbled to the surface. She knew the challenges were steep, but as she looked at the engine that she had just brought back to life, she realized this was precisely why she was here: to disrupt, to innovate. I can do this, she said more assertively. I will show them that a woman can lead in this industry. The conviction in her words surprised even herself, a small but potent step towards her future. The businessman tilted his head, an appreciation in his gaze. You'll need a project, he said, as if weighing her potential against the benchmark of action. What have you got in mind? Her mind raced, possibilities unfolding like a blueprint in front of her. I want to design a machine that streamlines assembly lines, minimizes waste, and optimizes energy use. Something that contributes not just to profit but to sustainability. The thought invigorated her, and just like that, an internal spark lit a fire of ambition within her. I like that, he said thoughtfully. It shows foresight in addressing future concerns. A rush of satisfaction coursed through Sarah. This was validation, but not just any validation. This was validation from someone whose opinion she imagined counted for something in this world. Yet, the seeds of doubt still buried themselves in her thoughts. Would this project be enough? Her father's skepticism flickered in her mind as she glanced at him. His face, a blend of pride and anxiety, prompted a flurry of internal conflict. She had stepped outside the roles that had always been laid out for her. Could he genuinely embrace this change? As if sensing her turmoil, the businessman leaned in, locking eyes with her. If you put your mind to this project, I can connect you with resources and mentors to guide you. You could be presenting to potential investors in a matter of months. An electrifying rush rushed through her. Could this newfound opportunity be the bridge she needed, the linkage between her dreams and reality? The prospect of actualizing her vision took root, but with it came the question, was she prepared for the relentless effort ahead? Of course, you'll need to prepare for criticism, he continued, especially in a field that isn't used to seeing voices like yours at the forefront. Are you ready to handle rejection? Yes, I need to be, she replied, embodying a determination she desperately wanted to own. This passion isn't just a fling. It's my life's work. The businessman smiled, a hint of a challenge gleaming in his eyes. Then let's see if you can back that up. Together, we'll push your limits. As they began to discuss the logistics, Sarah's mind buzzed with ideas. Yet, apprehension knotted within her. She was about to dive headfirst into a battle of hearts and minds, where each decision could be pivotal. In that moment of transition, the familiar scent of engine oil lingered in her senses, but now it carried the sweet fragrance of fresh beginnings and tough battles ahead. Would she ultimately be able to rise above not just the expectations but the very definitions of her identity? With the next steps unfolding before her, she felt pulsing determination warring against the uncertainty of future confrontations and challenges lying ahead. As the garage buzzed with new energy, a newfound path was emerging. Sarah's heartbeat quickened. She was poised on the precipice of a journey that promised both growth and struggle, a tightrope walk between validation and risking everything she had known. And just as the businessman opened his mouth to share more ideas, the air thickened with anticipation, making Sarah wonder, was she truly ready for the obstacles that awaited? The businessman's words hung in the air like a ripe fruit waiting to be plucked, and Sarah understood that amidst the encouragement lay an unspoken challenge. The discussions of resources and mentorship felt both liberating and suffocating. Was she truly prepared to bear her ambitions like a canvas, knowing that every stroke might invite criticism? The nagging question of her readiness settled uneasily in her gut, creating a tension that urged her forward yet pulled her back. "Let's lay down a timeline," he suggested, startling her from her spiral of doubt. "We'll give you 6 months. In that time, build a prototype and gather data on its efficiency. If you can demonstrate real potential, investors will take notice." 6 months. The mere thought was both exhilarating and daunting. A flood of ideas raced through her mind: options for materials, possibilities for design, procedures for testing, but along with them came a looming shadow of responsibility. Each component required diligence, creativity, and a willingness to pivot when faced with challenges. "Right," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I can break down what needs to be done into achievable milestones." The notion of structuring her hopes into tangible steps infused her with energy. Yet, a tiny voice whispered doubts about her past experiences or lack thereof. How could she, a mechanic with limited engineering education, compete in a world driven by data and advanced theories? The businessman seemed to read her thoughts, and perhaps he could see her hesitations as raw material for growth. "Start small. Something you're familiar with will pave the way for larger strides." Suddenly, her previous successes flashed before her. The engine she had rebuilt was no small feat, it had been intricately linked to her understanding of mechanics, her intuitiveness. "Perhaps I could integrate what I know about engine design into something larger," she proposed, her tone more confident as the concept crystallized. She could use her experience from the garage as an inflection point, a launching pad into the unfamiliar realms of engineering. "Exactly!" he exclaimed, his enthusiasm fueling her own. "Leverage your knowledge, it's your greatest asset. Don't shy away from what you've accomplished." With that, he opened the floodgates of insights, and Sarah allowed herself to embrace the budding possibility of her project. As they brainstormed, Sarah felt the atmosphere shift. Each idea became a stepping stone, each concern morphed into a challenge she could tackle. Yet her mind flickered to her father again. Would he understand her drive to innovate? Would he accept her transformation from a housebound mechanic's daughter to a budding engineer? The thought pricked at her, an emotional undertow she couldn't ignore. She steeled herself against a wave of doubt washing over her. This journey was hers to navigate, and while she valued his approval, she recognized the potential for conflict within their relationship. Disruption seldom came without resistance, especially when one's path diverged so sharply from expectations. "I'll start an online course and reach out for mentorship. I need to fortify my fundamentals," she decided aloud, her resolve strengthening. Ideas began to form rapid fire, each one paving the way toward a clearer vision of what she needed to achieve. "Good. That's the spirit," he said, his approval adding weight to her ambition. Yet, there it was again, an echo of self-doubt that threatened to steal her momentum. Would she be taken seriously by these mentors, or would her past haunt her future credibility? "Yes, I can do this," she affirmed internally, becoming her own cheerleader in the face of uncertainty. She sensed the urgency coursing through her. The time to act was now, and hesitation could prove deadly. As they wrapped up their discussions, Sarah felt a flicker of apprehension tap on her shoulder, an instinctual recognition that this journey would demand more than just skills or knowledge. She would be walking into an arena filled with skeptics, crafting a narrative of her own. Amidst the weighty expectations of others, the thought electrified her: a challenge, yes, but a chance to rewrite her story. "Don't forget to document everything," the businessman encouraged, nudging her focus back. "Investors love progress charts." Nods of understanding were exchanged, but within Sarah, a storm brewed as she realized how crucial documentation would be in both her project and her personal narrative. With each stride toward her ambition, she could cement her place in the industry, not just as a mechanic's daughter but as a formidable force of innovation. With a firm handshake, they parted, sealing the pact of her pursuit. Back in the garage, the scent of oil and metal now seemed less daunting, more like a gateway to what lay ahead. Yet as she stood amidst the familiar surroundings, determination wrestled with indecision. Would she truly be able to wield her past into a future that both terrifies and exhilarates her? Bursting with inspiration and anxiety, she felt the pulse of change thrumming beneath her skin. Just as she started sketching ideas in her notebook, a notification chimed on her phone, revealing an unexpected message: "I need to talk." "It's urgent." The signature, unmistakable. Her father's. What could he possibly want? The roots of their conversation tangled in her mind. Was she prepared for the confrontation that awaited? The tension in Sarah's chest thrummed like a misaligned engine, powerful yet erratic. Her father's abrupt message had catapulted her from the invigorating realm of possibility where her designs and ambitions formed promising shapes back into the reality of their complicated relationship. What urgency had sparked this communication? Was it an inquiry into her recent engagements, or was it a deeper disturbance lurking beneath the surface? She placed her phone down, taking a deep breath, letting the scent of motor oil and grease seep into her resolve. The small garage had been her sanctuary, an arena where each fix and every adjustment whispered the lessons of tenacity and skill. Now that sanctuary felt like a stage, and her father was waiting off stage, ready to enter with expectations that loomed large in her mind. Stepping outside, she focused on the tasks ahead. The weeds fringing her garage needed trimming, but they reminded her only of the chaos she felt. The mundane action of cutting grass transformed into a metaphor for her current state. She needed to clear the overgrowth, to make space for what would take root: a new version of herself. Pausing, she examined the tools in her garage. Each was a symbol of years spent overcoming obstacles, but that realization was bittersweet. The tools, forged through relentless labor, now looked like echoes of her father's expectations rather than instruments for her ambition. "Get it together," she scolded herself, pulling her gloves on with determination. The urgency of her father's message nagged at her, leaving her with the impatience of the unknown. After a quick tidy-up, she settled at her desk, the remnants of her brainstorming scattered like her thoughts. Flipping through her notebook, she traced the outlines of the prototype she envisioned. Each sketch started to breathe life. A motor design intertwined with energy efficiency, echoing her old projects yet stepping into uncharted domain. "What if I use materials that are more eco-friendly?" she pondered, jotting down notes. That could be her unique selling point, a hallmark of her mechanic background mixed with a vision for sustainable engineering. Was this a move that would give her credibility? Could it be the bridge from her past into her bold future? But then thoughts of her father reappeared, uninvited. He had been resolute about practicalities, often shunning the innovative for the reliable. How would he react if he saw her dreams fermented in experimentation rather than tradition? Her back tightened as the familiar tension settled back into her stomach. She decided not to let that question linger too long. Instead, she reached for her laptop and began researching potential mentors, contacts who could help her refine her ideas. Each click brought a flicker of excitement. This was her world now, one where intellectual curiosity and creativity melded to form something greater. Yet beneath that flicker loomed concern: would she be summarily dismissed by professionals who valued credentials over skills honed in a garage? The clock ticked away as she crafted a plan for her 6-month timeline. Milestones, online courses, networking opportunities, all laid out in clear, crisp format. She could visualize her progress, a roadmap stretching toward her prototype. Her determination surged. She could maneuver around every obstacle, just as she was about to form a schedule for reaching out to potential mentors. her phone vibrated again this time. It was a call from her father. The urgency within that call echoed in her mind like a warning bell. Taking a breath, she pressed answer. Sarah, his voice resonated with an authority that had always commanded respect, but today it also carried hints of something else, in anticipation layered with apprehension. "We need to talk." "About what?" she replied, forcing herself to come off as calm rather than her spiraling thoughts. "I know you've been working on something. I heard through the grapevine, and I think we need a conversation about the direction you're going." The tension in her chest transformed into a knot, much like the tightness in her grip around the phone. It wasn't just a chat, it felt like an impending confrontation, a collision of worlds. "Okay, let us talk then," she replied, though the uncertainty crept back in. With so much at stake in the next chapter of her life, she couldn't help but wonder if this conversation would herald support or opposition. As she ended the call, her heart raced. She was caught on the cusp of a dynamic shift, fueled by unyielding ambition and the weight of her past colliding into a high-stakes negotiation. The clearer her vision became, the more voluminous her fear loomed. The ice had cracked, and she stood above the abyss. Would her father embrace her journey, or would he pull her back, cementing her in the role of the mechanic's daughter? The moment to understand was fast approaching, drumming in her ears. Swallowing hard, Sarah steeled herself for the confrontation, feeling the pulse of change coursing through her veins. A wave of realization washed over her. This was the beginning of not just a project, but a battle for her identity. As she prepped herself, Sarah couldn't shake the gnawing apprehension. Despite her plans, she knew to expect the unexpected. But one thing was clear, change was coming, and so was the decisive moment, one that could either catapult her forward or plunge her into uncertainty. "Whatever happens, I'm ready," she whispered to herself, the strength of her resolve mingling with doubt. It was time to face the truth. It was no longer just about her ambitions, it was about how far she would fight to reclaim her narrative. The moment of reckoning loomed, and with it, the undeniable question: who would win, the mechanic's daughter or the innovator she aspired to become? Her pulse thrummed in her ears as Sarah prepared for their conversation. Pacing the floor of her garage, she replayed the words exchanged in the brief call. What did he know? How much had he heard? Anxiety twisted in her gut, but underneath that, a fierce determination simmered, urging her to confront the chaos of their current relationship head-on. Striking the wrench against her workbench, she recalled the countless nights spent dreaming up grand ideas while her father sat across from her, entangled in his focused, yet stifling expectations. It was there, amidst the wrenches and wires, that she learned to dismantle engines and build them back up, but she had also absorbed an unyielding pressure to adhere to a narrow path, one paved with practicality and tradition. Maybe this time, I can make him see me differently, she thought, imagining the vision she crafted so meticulously and the strength swelling within her as she pursued an alternative path. The hours before the meeting evaporated. Each strike brought Sarah closer to shedding her inhibitions, reminding her that she was more than a mechanic's daughter. Tension coiled tighter with every passing moment, the impending discussion looming like a storm cloud above her head. As she geared into high-speed nervousness, she recalled a mantra that had guided her time and again: facing discomfort often paves the way to growth. Time approached. The sound of her father's truck rolling down the driveway sent a fresh jolt of anxiety through her. This was at the moment she had mentally prepared for all day. As she inhaled sharply, she reminded herself that this conversation was not just about defending her dreams, it would define who she was becoming. That he stepped into the garage, his posture radiating authority and, beneath it, a trace of concern. "Sarah," he started, his booming voice softened by an unusual undertone. "I've noticed you've been working on something." His words hung in the air, invoking the prospect of judgment, yet an opportunity as well. "I have," she affirmed, her own voice steadying as she carved a sense of confidence from the tension. "I want to pursue sustainable motor design. I believe it can work." Her father remained silent, tension rippling in the space between them as she assessed his reaction. She continued, each word flowing more freely now: "I know you might not understand why I want to take this route, but the world is changing and I want to be a part of that change." His brow furrowed, but the weight of his expectations seemed to lift slightly. "Sarah, I've always respected your skills. But this sort of ambition, it's risky. It's different from what I've done." The cautious sunlight of afternoon filtered through the garage like a tentative approval. "Risky," she echoed, her voice unwavering. "Yes, but it's manageable if approached wisely. I've mapped out a timeline and identified potential mentors. This isn't just a dream, I've constructed concrete plans." The air thickened. He weighed the gravity of her intentions against the flickers of his protective instincts. Would he rally behind her as she sought to carve out a new identity? Would this be the moment he recognized her not as the mechanic's daughter, but as an innovator unafraid to tread uncharted territory? "Mentors?" he asked, brows slightly raised, a sign of curiosity. "Yes," she pressed onward, emboldened by the flicker of intrigue in his eyes. "I need guidance to navigate the parameters I don't know yet. I want to learn and grow, really grow." Silence settled between them, and Sarah took the quiet moment to breathe in possibilities. She longed for validation of her ambitions, but now, a deeper truth resonated. This wasn't just about winning his approval, it was about claiming her identity in the process. "And if I fail?" She positioned tentatively, leaning into vulnerability. "What if I end up just like you said? Making mistakes?" "I do worry, yes," he replied, his voice shifting, "but every failure has the potential to teach you something important. That comes with risk." Courage flickered in the depths of her, allowing her to reflect on her father's perspective. It was an unexpected connection, a sign that perhaps she could redefine their relationship not just in terms of her ambitions but also as allies in each other's growth. "Then help me, Dad," she ventured boldly, her heart racing. "Be a part of my journey rather than just watching from the sidelines. We could combine your experience with my vision." His eyes pricked with surprise, the challenge of vulnerability standing between them, a challenge almost palpable in the bright garage air. "Sarah," he began, a mix of pride and hesitation lacing his tone, "if we do this it will require more than just carving out your ambitions. It'll demand that we both change." The weight of that truth resonated in her bones, and Sarah recognized this shared journey wouldn't just push her forward, it would lead them into uncharted territories together, redefining their narrative piece by agonizing piece. With resolve hardening her voice, she replied, "I'm ready for that change, Dad. It's time for us to evolve." Something flickered in his expression, a subtle shift toward newfound acceptance. Just when she thought the tide was turning, he hesitated, something lingering unspoken in his gaze. "Let's revisit after I've thought it through," he finally said, leaving Sarah teetering on the edge of hope and uncertainty. And it dawned on her in that moment, every second spent in turmoil might lead to enlightenment, or it could drift into unresolved tension, the past clinging like stubborn grease. The meeting had opened a door, but just as easily, it could slam shut again. As he walked out, Sarah stood in the echoes of their conversation, trapped between promise and trepidation. The certainty she had felt began to fray at the edges. She knew her battle wasn't just convincing him, her truest reckoning involved dismantling her own fears to build something meaningful from the rubble. Would the opportunities ahead be seized with courage, or would they somehow slip through her fingers like sand? Determined, Sarah clenched her fists at her sides, grappling with both anticipation and anxiety. Change often comes at a steep price, and she was ready for the climb. But would her past influence her future, or would she emerge unscathed, shaped by her new truth? Driving deeper into her determination, she wondered what came next. Confronting gentle expectations was one thing, facing an undertaking of this magnitude was another, an evolution that awaited her beyond the garage's walls. There lay the uncharted path, but just beyond, dark clouds threatened to surface. A storm was brewing, and the reality of that change could either shield her from fear or drown her in doubt. Drawn into thought, Sarah poured her focus back on her sketch, reminding herself, this was only the beginning, and she would need to prepare for whatever awaited her around the next corner. Each day blended into the next as Sarah delved deeper into her plans, the allure of sustainable motor design becoming an almost palpable force. The sketches littered her garage, digital and hand-drawn visions of what could be if only she tapped into the uncharted potential of electric motors and eco-friendly materials. She envisioned sleek designs, efficient systems, and a faster route to energy independence. Yet, even amidst the fervor of creation, doubt shadowed her steps. Whenever she rotated a wrench or tweaked a conceptual model, thoughts of her father's skepticism seeped in, battering her confidence like a relentless wind against an open door. What if she failed? What if the inevitable mistakes she'd seen others make replayed in her life? Yet, as she wrestled with these questions, she unearthed a bubbling resolve. Over the next few weeks, Sarah sought out her potential mentors, tapping into the small network of innovators she had discovered at university gatherings. Every phone call was an exercise in pushing boundaries. "What's your experience with sustainable practices?" she asked, each conversation carving away layers of her previous self. The feedback was invaluable, breathing life into her concepts, and providing insights she hadn't considered. One mentor, a seasoned engineer named Mark, took a particular interest in her passion, offering to assist with a small prototype project. His enthusiasm bolstered Sarah's fragile confidence, reminding her of the power of collaboration. "Sarah," he said over coffee at a local cafe, "the market is shifting. There's a real hunger for what you're proposing. You just need to allow yourself to take those leaps." Each encounter silenced some of her doubts, revealing glimpses of the fearless innovator she aspired to be. Inspired by Mark's conviction, Sarah returned to the garage, her mind buzzing with new ideas. The clutter of components, wires, batteries, frames transformed from mere objects into the embodiment of her ambitions. The tactile sensation of her tools began to morph from a link to her father's past into a bridge to her future, yet, in the midst of progress, shadows from her recent conversation with her father crept back. How would he respond to her building ambition beyond the confines of their previous discussions? It was clear she was venturing onto a more precarious path, one fraught with risks that lay outside the protective bubble he had always offered. The day arrived when those shadows turned into tangible reality. With her head swimming with plans, she decided to call her father, hoping to gain insight into how he navigated the exposure of vulnerability. "Dad, can we talk again?" she asked, her heart thudding like the beat of a drum in her ears. "I've made some progress on the project we discussed." His tone reflected the mixture of surprise and wariness. "Sure, Sarah. What have you done?" The enormity of her plans crashed upon her and she felt both exhilarated and terrified to share. As she laid out her prototypes and the visions she had for sustainable advancements, she sensed his skepticism still loomed, thick like humidity before a storm. Yet, there was a hint of intrigue, a flicker of the father who respected her skills and not just her lineage. "I'm gathering resources and mentorship," she explained, her voice steadier than she felt. "I want to build something that combines your experiences with my vision. What materials are you using? Have you consulted safety regulations?" He probed, eyebrows knitted in thought. "The materials are recycled aluminum and components from defunct models. I've checked into safety protocols with my mentors," she assured him, her heart racing with the potential for his support. Then, came his pause, the space morbidly charged with weighty unspoken expectations. I think this could be helpful, but you should know it's still not a straightforward path for you. You could face significant challenges," he conceded, almost reluctantly. "Challenges I'm willing to face, Dad," she replied, determination surging within her like an energetic current. "I want changes with you. I want you to be involved." His eyes narrowed, delving into the depths of her words. "You understand that means navigating new dynamics within our work relationship?" "I do," she answered, the thought of a shared journey igniting a flame of possibility within her. "I believe it's time we evolve not just in our projects but how we understand and support one another." And just like that, the past began to shift. The potential for collaboration awakened different vulnerabilities, transparency, understanding, even moments of fear as their paths intertwined further than ever before. But with transformation came the nagging question, could he truly embrace this evolution, Sarah leaned back in her chair with newfound hope coursing through her like oil through a well-tuned engine, but her thoughts still oscillated between longing and anxiety. What awaited them now could turn this endeavor into a trial of truth or fracture the fragile bridge they were tentatively building. As she prepared for what lay ahead, anticipation pricked her skin. Was she ready to harness the sometimes tumultuous relationship they shared into a partnership of genuine support? It was time to face the realities that transformed their roles not just as daughter and father but as contemporaries in a field that was both familiar and new. Would the merging of their ambitions spark a creative revolution? Perhaps the tension lingering within the stagnant air of the garage was only a prelude to something monumental. Let us rebuild this connection, she whispered to herself, a mantra against the uncertainties. But the deeper question remained unanswered: would her father join her in this evolution, or would old patterns cement them in place? Feeling the weight of the impending decision, she returned to the plan sprawled across her workbench, a pulse of impending change thrumming just beneath the surface. The stakes had escalated, and Sarah was poised on the brink of discovery. Would they claim a new lineage together or retreat to the familiar shadows of the past? It was a truth waiting to unfurl, but the next moment could shift the tide. Would ambition pave a new chapter, or would it unearth buried fears left dormant too long? The days that followed Sarah's conversation with her father were fraught with tension but also a palpable sense of urgency. She immersed herself in her designs, meticulously refining her prototypes and reviewing feedback from Mark and other mentors. Each morning, the sun streaming through the garage window felt like an invitation to confront her fears, yet it also amplified the weight of her ambition. There was no turning back. This was the moment she had both craved and dreaded. On a particularly bright morning, fueled by caffeine and a restless spirit, Sarah decided to tackle a fundamental issue: the sustainability of her materials. She had been so focused on her designs that the larger questions about sourcing and production were only now surfacing with conviction. The idea of scouring the internet for suppliers felt daunting, but the thought of her father's skeptical gaze steered her toward action. Sitting at her laptop, she dissected the research, jotting down suppliers that aligned with her values. Each click and scroll unearthed innovative companies, but one in particular caught her attention: a small business specializing in biodegradable components for electric vehicles. Flashes of bright ideas ignited in her mind. If she reached out, they might offer not only materials but also insights into the industry. This could be her chance to deepen her knowledge and broaden her network. With her heart racing, she drafted an email. Dear supplier's name, I'm an aspiring engineer exploring pathways in sustainable motor design, and I'm particularly fascinated by your commitment to eco-friendly materials. As she clicked send, a mix of hope and vulnerability surged through her. Would they respond? Meanwhile, she also felt drawn to re-engage her father. In his own way, he had become both a source of inspiration and tension. How would he react to her research? Would he view this as another sign of her divergence from his principles, or might he see a glimpse of potential collaboration? With trembling fingers, she typed a text: Dad, I've been looking into alternative materials and want to discuss how we can implement new methods in our designs. Can we meet? The response was immediate. I'll be home at 6. As the hour drew nearer, Sarah's heart raced again. Was she ready to navigate another layer of their complex relationship? She wanted to ask not only for his technical insight but also for his willingness to adapt. In the past, every conversation teetered precariously on the line between fatherly guidance and personal judgment. When her father arrived, Sarah tried to mask her nerves with professionalism. She laid out her latest research, her sketches, and even included the email she had sent to the supplier. I believe integrating these materials could serve not only sustainability but also innovation in our work. He sat in silence, scrutinizing her blood, sweat, and hope sprawled across the table. His brows furrowed, as though each diagram posed a challenge. This looks promising, but you need to be aware, not everything that's marketed as sustainable meets safety standards. We can't cut corners. I know, she rushed to say, but I've done the research, and I believe this is the direction we need to go. It doesn't just align with my vision. It can elevate the work we do together. He leaned back in his chair, a mixture of admiration and apprehension painting his face. If this is going to work, Sarah, we have to ensure every element is not just innovative but also practical. The caveat hung heavy in the air between them. It was becoming clear that their nascent partnership demanded trust, a quality that had lain dormant for years. I want to work on this together, I need your expertise, she offered, her voice steadied as he mulled over her words. Sarah felt a tentative shift. It was as if a barrier was thinning, revealing the potential for something new. Yet the thought that gripped her mind was the reminder of her father's caution. It wasn't just about materials or designs, but about navigating the intricate dynamics of their relationship. Maybe we could start small. Test a prototype, her father offered at last. But no shortcuts, and I want to be involved in the process. Relief washed over her. This willingness felt like a spark that could ignite a new trajectory. They started discussing specifics, the initial design and materials she had sourced. Once their plans were solidifying, a surge of excitement blended with caution rolled through her. They were inching closer to something transformative, though shadows of doubt lingered. Would the father's protective instinct clash with her innovative drive? Just then, an email alert snapped her focus back. Her inquiry to the supplier had received a response, a request for a meeting. Sarah's pulse quickened. What if this turned into an opportunity for collaboration? Would she be able to showcase her father's expertise while establishing her own vision? As she glanced at her father, a wave of determination surged through her. The reclamation of their relationship hung in the balance, and the stakes were rising. This meeting could be pivotal, but would it reinforce their burgeoning partnership or send them spiraling back into old habits? In that moment, she understood, they were embarking on a path filled with unknowns, yet the potential for a groundbreaking journey rolled before them, one that could alter both their personal and professional landscapes. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. The moment of truth was approaching, and with it, a world of possibilities. Would they seize the opportunity or let it slip away? The next chapter of their story was just beginning to unfold. Days turned into weeks as the collaborative project between Sarah and her father took root in the garage. Each evening, they found themselves lost in discussions that spanned from technical specifications to the ethical implications of sustainable engineering practices. Transcending the roles of daughter and father, they navigated uncharted waters as equals, their conversations becoming dialogues of intellectual curiosity and shared ambition. Sarah took the lead, presenting her research with newfound confidence. With each idea she articulated, she could sense her father recognizing her not merely as the mechanic's daughter, but as an innovator driven by purpose. The old expectations began to dissolve, replaced by a growing mutual respect. "This is innovative, Sarah," he'd say, nodding approvingly as she detailed plans for the prototype. "I hadn't considered the benefits of biodegradable components in motor design until now." With her father's guidance, she learned to leverage his depth of knowledge as she explored areas where her youthful creativity could intertwine with seasoned expertise. Together, they began sketching the blueprints for a minimal waste electric motor, one that utilized both the sustainable materials she had sourced and practical engineering principles he valued highly. Each design draft was a testament to their evolving relationship. Each line drawn represented not just mechanics but a shaping of their identities, a shared venture into a future replete with possibilities. Then came the fateful day of their meeting with the supplier whose materials Sarah had researched. Stepping into the consultation room, she felt an electric thrill, her heart pounding against her ribs. The supplier, a dynamic woman named Jenna, welcomed them, her eyes sparkling with curiosity about their ambitions. "So, what do you have for me?" Jenna smiled, leaning forward with genuine interest as they laid out their vision. Sarah's voice resonated with newfound authority as she elucidated the design principles underpinning their project. "By focusing on sustainability, we're not just addressing a market demand, we're making a commitment to innovation while challenging industry norms." As they spoke, Jenna jotted down notes, her expression shifting from interest to excitement. "This is exactly the kind of initiative we need. It's refreshing to see a new generation asking for more from their engineering projects." Sarah's confidence swelled further at Jenna's enthusiasm. This was validation not just of her ideas, but of the shift in her relationship with her father, who sat beside her, nodding with pride. When Jenna proposed a possible partnership to create a trial design using the biodegradable components, Sarah felt her heart soar. They were on the verge of real progress, a tangible product forged from their collective labor and vision. When they returned home that evening, the atmosphere was charged with an exhilarating mix of anticipation and accomplishment. They stood side by side under the dim garage lights, reflecting on what this project could mean for their futures. "I couldn't have done this without your input, Dad. Thank you for being willing to explore this with me," Sarah admitted, her voice steady but filled with sincerity. His reply was a gentle smile that carried months of evolution in their relationship. "You've shown me a new perspective, Sarah. I didn't see the future as clearly before. I am proud of you." Her chest tightened with emotion. This was not a fleeting moment of acceptance, this was authentic growth. The man who had once been the source of her burdens now bore witness to her transformation, recognizing her not just in terms of her lineage but as a competent innovator in her own right. As the prototype came together over the following months, Sarah transformed from a mechanic's daughter into a pioneering engineer, steadily shaping her own identity in a male-dominated field. The project culminated in a presentation to potential investors. Standing before a panel of industry leaders, adorned with nerves yet bolstered by the support of her father beside her, Sarah confidently delivered her pitch, a blend of her strategic implementation plans and a compelling vision of sustainable innovation. The investors responded with curiosity, probing her for details, but it was the earnest spirit behind her intentions that captivated them. "We're not just creating an energy-efficient machine, we're positioning ourselves at the forefront of a movement toward sustainable engineering," she asserted, each word filled with ingrained passion. In the end, as the meeting concluded, several investors expressed interest, their expressions a mixture of admiration and surprise. Sarah beamed with satisfaction. She had faced fears head-on and emerged as a formidable presence. Later, as she left the conference room with her father, the familiar sense of apprehension from earlier months gave way to unadulterated joy. "We did it, Dad," she exclaimed. He turned and pulled her into an embrace, a shared triumph eclipsing all prior tensions. She was ready to take on whatever lay ahead, her aspirations no longer burdened by familial expectations. This was her moment, the achievement of not only professional goals but of an enduring personal metamorphosis. She had shifted from the shadows of her past into the light of her own narrative, with tangible results to show for it. "Let us keep building, together. This is just the beginning," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. And indeed, it was. As they walked towards the garage, Sarah knew they were forging a new legacy, one crafted through collaboration, respect, and an unwavering commitment to innovation. This was her journey, revitalized by determination and adorned with newfound purpose. Amid the oil-stained tools and sketches that mapped dreams into reality, Sarah stood proudly, not just as the mechanic's daughter, but as the architect of her future. Now is your time. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you to transform your life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help passionate stories like this reach others. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey and how you see your path developing. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.